The Holy Gospel according to Luke, the 23rd chapter. When they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Then Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they cast lots to divide his clothing. And the people stood by watching, but the leaders scoffed at him, saying, "He saved others, let him save himself if he is the Messiah of God, his chosen one." The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine and saying, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was also an inscription over him, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who were hanged there kept deriding him, saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed have been condemned justly, for we are getting what we deserve for our deeds, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." And this is the gospel of our Lord. I invite you to please be seated. Folks, as I started today, or shared earlier, I just recently returned. I, along with 21 others, half of that group from Calvary, the other half from my previous congregation, we returned from an 11-day pilgrimage, a tour of the Holy Lands of Israel and Palestine. And one thing you should know is that I returned yesterday, and so my internal clock says that it's 2 a.m. right now. Okay, so bear with me here. But folks, it was an amazing trip. It was an amazing trip in so many ways, and in the coming weeks, those of us who traveled will find ways to share those stories with you because it was a life-changing trip. But I have to say, there was one thing that was clear to all of us as we traveled, and it was this: things aren't always as they appear. Things aren't always as they seem. For example, we ended our tour, the last day of our tour, we were at the Dead Sea. You've heard of this from the Bible, the Dead Sea. We were at the actual Dead Sea. The Dead Sea, it looks like a lake. We have lots of lakes around here, right? And water is water. So it was like any other lake. That is, until we all slipped into our bathing suits, all of us, and we walked out into that water. And I watched members of our group, people like my buddy Bill Baum, or Jerry and Colleen Roth, or Chris and Becky Worley out there in their bathing suits, and they just sat back. And what happens in the Dead Sea? You float, right? You float. It was wild. And we learned things aren't always as they appear. And when we got to Bethlehem and to Jerusalem, we walked in and out of all these shops, and we quickly found that there were no price tags on the items in the shop because over there you barter. You negotiate a price on the items you buy, and we got pretty good at it, I have to say. It was kind of fun. You'd go back and forth with those shop owners, and finally you'd land on a price you felt was, well, you couldn't push him much further because he was about at the lowest price he would go, and you thought you got a good deal, right? That is until at dinner time when we got together over a meal and shared our experiences, and people like Pam Carlson or Britta Baum shared with us that they had gotten the same item we had for half the price. And we learned that things aren't always as they appear. Yeah. And maybe more importantly, we learned something else. We learned that all those crazy things we hear on TV and through the media, and we've learned here in the U.S. about the people who live in the Holy Land today. We learned that those things aren't always true, huh? Fears about safety and which people we are supposed to fear, they aren't as they seem on TV. At least this was our experience. We never once felt unsafe. In fact, we felt quite the opposite. We spent hours and hours during our trip with both Palestinians and Israelis. We spent time with Christians and Jews and Muslims alike. And as we met with these new friends, we realized, we were reminded that things aren't always as they seem. And along the way, we visited all these holy sites, these great sites of our faith, and we realized that we have some images from Sunday school about what these sites should look like. But instead of those images from Sunday school, we found old churches on these holy sites that were overrun by pilgrims speaking every language in the world. These churches were old and filled with icons and incense and smoke and crusty priests. They were in the middle of bustling cities. We sing each Christmas, "O Little Town of Bethlehem," but we found that that little town isn't so little anymore. And the spot where Jesus was crucified in the story of our faith, that spot was outside the city, and we found that that spot, in fact, was right in the heart of the city today. We learned that things aren't always as they appear. It was a great trip, but we learned things aren't always as they appear. Folks, today in our reading, we hear a story, the story we tell every year about Jesus being on the cross, right? The story of Jesus' final hours, his crucifixion, and that story from all outside appearances would seem to say or portray to us that this was the end for Jesus. This was his death, his final hours, and being put to death in such a tragic way, being nailed to the cross. It would appear from all outside perceptions that his life ended in failure, that his preaching and his teaching, his mission was stopped. They put him down, they nailed him to the cross so that all could see, so that they could humiliate Jesus. And from this picture of the cross that we get tonight, it would appear that Jesus' entire mission was totally botched. It was a total waste. It was a failure, But folks, we know the rest of the story. In this faith of ours, I think we know that when it comes to the story of Jesus, things aren't always as they appear. Things aren't always as they seem. The events of the cross, in this faith that we share, they aren't the end. It isn't a disastrous conclusion to the story. This story and the cross, they don't point to failure. Rather, the cross in this faith that we share is the beginning. The cross would be a symbol, right? It would become a reminder that things in this faith of ours aren't always as they appear. The cross isn't the end of the story because we know Jesus lives. That's the story of our faith. Folks, I think one of the reasons we tell this story of Jesus' death this Sunday and each and every year is that it reminds us that just maybe that's the whole story of our faith in a nutshell, from beginning to end. That's what this whole story of our faith is about. That in this faith of ours, things aren't always as it appears. They aren't. Think for a minute with me about the story we church people tell. It's a wild one if you think about it. We tell a story of a little baby born to an unwed mother, born in a barn, in the back alley, behind some flea-ridden motel, to parents who come from a nowhere village of Nazareth off in the hills. Joseph, Jesus' father, was about to abandon Mary. I mean, talk about a dysfunctional beginning to the story. This Jesus was a nobody. And the story of our faith says that this nobody child was the Son of God. Things aren't always as they appear. And this nobody child would grow up and start to teach a message that went against everything people believed and what everyone understood as sort of the status quo way back then. Jesus taught things like this: the last are really first, and the first are really last. Jesus taught that children, those expendables in that culture way back when, Jesus said that those children, they're the ones I want to come to me. The poor, the lost, the lonely, the persecuted, the hungry, Jesus said they're the ones who God gives preference to. Not the pious or the muckety-muck elites of that day. The outcasts are the ones who have a special place in God's world. Again and again, Jesus teaches that things aren't always as they seem in this world of ours. And today, like we've said, we hear it again. We hear the end of the story of Jesus' life, a life that seems to end in total failure, and we're reminded again that things aren't as they seem. And so, folks, I wonder tonight, if just maybe this God of ours would want us to know that the same is true for you and me today. For you and me, things in our world, in our lives, aren't as they seem through the eyes of God. Just maybe what we're taught about this world and what's important, who's in charge, what it means to live a good life, all those stories we tell ourselves about this life of ours, maybe in this faith we share, folks, maybe things aren't always as they appear in our world too. For example, think about all the images we have or what we've defined as the good life or a successful life, a life filled with thick wallets and lots of toys. Just maybe for Jesus, things aren't as they appear in this world. And families, I think we're taught that the perfect family has those 2.5 kids who are all bright and athletic and musical and on the honor roll and in every activity. I could go on. And I think there are all kinds of images of what the perfect family is supposed to look like. But maybe we're reminded tonight that in this faith of ours, we're reminded that things aren't always as they appear around us. All those pressures aren't as important as we make them out to be. Maybe we have our priorities a little mixed up now and then. And this week we'll celebrate Thanksgiving. I think we're taught or have all kinds of crazy expectations about what a family holiday is supposed to look like. Though it rarely lives up to our expectations, we have those expectations. Maybe in God's world, things aren't always as they appear there too. Folks, I think this is how things work for God and for this faith of ours. We have all these images of what the perfect retirement is supposed to look like, what our kids are supposed to be involved in, and how they're supposed to be achieving what the perfect mother or father or spouse is supposed to look like, what your goals in life are supposed to be, even what the perfect person of faith is supposed to look like. As the story of the cross tonight that we read reminds us, maybe today Jesus is looking at you and me. At you and me, those of us who feel we maybe constantly fall short of all those crazy expectations in the world. Those of us for whom it feels like life is a big mess from time to time. Those of us who seem to be exhausted from constantly chasing that perfect or polished life. Folks, maybe Jesus is looking at you and me today and saying, hey, in my world, things aren't always as they appear. Things aren't as they seem. You're mine, Whatever your life looks like, though the world around you may be saying this or that about what the good life looks like, or what the perfect Christian looks like, or what it means to succeed, with me, things aren't as they appear. I come so that you would know nothing will separate me from you. You're mine. Never forget that. Because to me, things aren't as they seem. Thanks be to God. Amen.